Hi, Lewe.
Hi, Valerie. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you as well.
Seems like ages, but it's good to see you anyway. Well, what more things do we have to share about the systems thinking approach in planning? Many advantages to build on our previous session. Let's start with the first one. Val, focus on the whole planning unit as well as the interactions with the other systems and interrelationships of the components. So I guess if they're one of the, I think, top three system thinking concepts or characteristics of living systems is this notion of holism, and it referring to the whole being much greater than the sum of the individual component parts. And the notion that if one part changes and or the interaction between a part of a system and another part of the system changes, it influences the emergent properties of the whole system. So being very conscious of that as a really important insight in regard to using the systems thinking approach to planning.
Right. And I think taking a look at the interactions and interrelationships also lets us be better prepared for when changes occur or when a competitor makes a change, or we might even predict how they might react to what we're doing. So by taking a look at not just us and pretending that we are this lovely little island that no one is ever going to impact, by knowing that we are open to being impacted by other systems and other organizations, that we are better at strategic planning.
Indeed, and you're referring, of course, to the changing external environment of which an organisation is a part of that system, but also within the organisation itself, there are lots of moving parts that influence its ability to achieve whatever outcome or market positioning that they're aspiring to. And in the context of getting the parts more integrated within an organisation, there's a metaphor we like to use called the Rubik's Cube metaphor, Valerie, you might recall, whereby if I'm trying to solve a Rubik's Cube, if I think I've solved one side of the puzzle and it's gotten all red, more than likely I've messed up another part or another side of that cube. So understanding how what you do in one part of the organisation impacts the other is a really crucial insight from the systems thinking approach to strategic planning.
That's a great example, Lewe. Thank you.
Zooming. We probably would have used another word maybe before 2020, but Zoom is the word of the year, I believe, or at least still is the case in 2021. And of course, what that is about is zooming out. So getting that helicopter view of the situation that you're working with, and then being able to zoom in to understand how the different parts of a system interrelate, as we were describing earlier. And that capacity to zoom in and out unlocks different aspects of the systems thinking approach to strategic planning.
I think to be strategic, you have to have both skills to see the big picture and the details. And naturally, it doesn't happen for everyone. And so by using the systems thinking approach, we can see both. We can take a look at the big picture, be strategic, think about where we want to go as an organization, how we might be impacted by the external environment, and also make sure that the details and all the analysis and the project management, all of the details are done as well to help us go towards where we want to get to.
Yeah, I don't think it's a natural skill for everyone. Some of us are much better preferring an analytical, detailed approach to what we do. Others are already natural big picture thinkers. So certainly you can learn both, and that's obviously what we support people who we work with to do, is work at both levels. But also it helps you understand that you need a mixture of types of people within your organization as well as part of a team to cover off both or all levels.
Okay. Another thing that's really important in strategic planning is making sure that you have both the processes and the structures to support you in executing that plan. And I've discovered by talking to other planners in the world that they understand processes, but they don't understand structures as well. So we have this iceberg of change that talks about the content. So what are the results you want? What's the outcomes of your system? That's the stuff that's above the water and easy to see. And underneath are the processes and the structures. And then deep down is the culture that all have to support those outcomes, those results that you want to get. And if your processes are stopping you from moving forward and your structures don't allow your people to communicate and work well together, then you're not going to get the results that you want. It's just as simple as that. So by using the systems thinking approach, we make sure that processes and the structures are there so that you can execute the plan as effectively as possible.
Yeah, and the iceberg is a lovely metaphor too, because of the fact that the tip of the iceberg is only 13% of the whole iceberg. The vast majority of it, the 87%, actually sits below that waterline. So what we observe as the results, or what's visible for an organization, is, as we say, just that tip of the iceberg, and the cause or the relationship between processes, structures and culture and resources and competencies all come together to deliver that result that we're seeing above the surface. So the message is, if you want to change the results or what you see above the surface, you need to change process, structure, culture, commitment below the surface to enable that to happen. Because as I think it was Edward Demings said, every organization is perfectly designed to get the results it currently gets. So if you want the results to change, you have to go below the waterline to see what can be modified.
Great quote. Thank you.
I like this one too, Valerie, and our great friend Jim McKinlay explained this to us in Calgary in 2015, or reminded us of the comprehensive and integrated way that we use in the systems thinking approach to strategic planning, what we call our version of the balanced scorecard, or the quadruple bottom line, if you like. And you can see the scorecard is visualized in 4 parts, starting in the top right-hand corner: employees and operations, obviously internally focused. And then starting to go external when we're starting to talk about customers in the bottom right-hand side, and then flowing into owners and stakeholders, and then more broadly in the top left-hand corner, impact on community and society within which the organization is situated as part of that broader system. And so the comprehensive piece is about having a system of results that are interrelated, and what the arrows in that diagram imply, that they each feed forward to each other. So happy employees, good operations leads to happy customers, satisfied customers, which leads to happy stakeholder owners who are responsible for the organization. And of course, successful organizations within a community and society lead to better community and society, and that flows back into employees and operations. So it's a what we call a virtuous cycle of results there, Valerie.
And I like the word key. We don't measure everything. We take a look comprehensively, but we choose the ones that are really the best indicators to show that the organization's moving forward and achieving the results that they want to achieve.
One things I think we do using the systems thinking approach, Valerie, to planning is deriving those key success measures directly from the purpose of the organization. So where that's vision, mission, values, as the, if you like, the box set, and what we ensure happens in the processes that we facilitate is those measures or that evidence of successfully achieving that vision mission for the organization over whatever time period that the planning horizon set is tracked by the measures that capture evidence of that being achieved. That I think is a really powerful component of the systems thinking approach to planning.
It is, and having those right metrics that feed back into the system to allow us to make change as we iterate and as we move forward is better than measuring the easy stuff a year later, right?
Yes, and of course, key success measures is like step 3 of our 10-step planning process, Valerie. So we don't let anyone avoid it, and we make sure it happens early, because more often than not, when we come into an organization to assist with planning, the whole piece on measurement is seemed to have been forgotten more often than not.
Right. Another really important thing around systems is we use the systems thinking approach, and it reminds us that there's many goals within the system. So there's multiple goals for the system itself. So for whatever we're planning for, could have, goals around financial stability and maybe market growth. But the subsystems underneath, the departments, the teams, the individuals, they could have multiple goals as well. And it could be things like being seen more by management, or learning a new skill, or leveraging a new technology, something like that. And the systems thinking approach reminds us about those multiple goals and keeping track of them and being aware of them. As a good leader, we need to be aware of what our individual team members want as a result of being part of the system.
Yes, it brings us back to the systems thinking mindset that we like to encourage in leaders of organizations that we work with. It's yes, and yes, we can have that, and we can also achieve something else at the same time. So that's the notion of multiple outcomes. It's under the yes and mindset, as contrasted to the either or mindset. We're either going to take this pathway or that pathway, and there being no possibility of accommodating alternative outcomes that people might want to achieve. And the magic acronym in all of this, from a organizational perspective, working on the systems thinking approach to planning, is the WIFM, the what's in it for me at each level. So we know that as we cascade a strategy down through an organization, we need to be very conscious that to get people to buy in and stay in to a planning process, we need to be really clear about what's in it for them as individual parts of the system that they're working within, to do the things that are in the best interests of the whole, and then would consequently benefit them as well. So multiple outcomes is a really key systems thinking concept.
And I think another thing that people often forget about systems naturally lose energy. It's called entropy. And we know this about systems. So when we use the systems thinking approach, we ensure that we inject energy, just like those booster shots of energy, to ensure that the system exists and is successful over the long term. So it's that longevity by being aware of how systems work, and by making sure that we put more energy in, so that the system continues to work as it should over the long term.
Yeah, Valerie, I mean, an obvious metaphor to use here is health and well-being. People, I don't, but other people may choose to use a personal trainer every every month to, you know, inject that energy back into their routine. Other people may choose to go away on a, you know, a health farm retreat for, you know, once every year as their sort of booster shot for their energy and well-being, etc. And, you know, not go into rehab, but go into a cleaning phase of their health and well-being or whatever. So there's plenty of examples of how individuals can inject new energy into whatever their ambitions are, and the same applies to organizations, of course. And the underpinning systems principle that relates to this concept is what they call entropy, which is the tendency for systems to deteriorate over time. And so the idea of, you know, putting a booster shot into it is to bring it back up to its sort of alert state, ready to adjust to a changing external environment. And that notion of keeping the heat on and keeping an organization, you know, at the edge of innovation in a marketplace is a really crucial skill of leaders. It's actually called adaptive leadership, is knowing just how much to heat things up, such as it doesn't go over the top and exhaust everyone, but also not low enough to allow people to relax. You've got to keep that zone of what's called productive disequilibrium active, and to allow organizations to do the best they can in any particular environment they're operating within.
And of course, the roller coaster of change, which we both love, is really about leading change effectively. And by making sure that leaders understand how they personally, as well as their people, are going to react to change, so that you lead people in a way that is best for them. It meets them where they are, and you speak to them and give them examples and listen to them in a way that works for them where they are at that stage in this whole roller coaster of change.
Yes, the well used saying of organizations don't change, people inside organizations do the changing. And the roller coaster is a really useful tool that we also recommend leaders explore application of during the transformational stage of the systems thinking approach to strategic planning. So that obviously follows the planning and budgeting, and then we've organized ourselves ready for change. And then when we go through the change, the leaders have to go through first, because they're the ones who have to buy in and stay in to whatever adjustments are required. And then they have to lead their own teams through the same change process as well. And sort of, as I said earlier, it's about getting all of your people through it. Not everyone may make it, but meeting them where they are and nurturing them along so they can see the what's in it for them for sticking through this change cycle. Right. We call it natural, normal, and highly predictable. And we find it's a really useful tool for leaders to map their people to, so they know what to say when to get them through this change process.
Right. And I think the better we are at leading change effectively, we're going to get less resistance. People are going to understand what's in it for them more. We get more support for the change by understanding how people are feeling. And people don't resist change. You and I know that they resist the losses associated with change. So leaders need to understand that people are going to have losses associated with change. They could be big losses, they could be little losses, but in their mind, it's a loss. So the leader has to understand that and lead the person, you know, with empathy and with care through that process.
Yeah, and just to pick up on the natural, normal, and highly predictable notion of the roller coaster. We also recognize that depending on the extent of change that you're planning to make with an organizational planning process, if you're only going to go pretty shallow and just touch on adjusting processes and structures, maybe not such a big impact. But if you're going to go deep and change the purpose of the organization and the culture and commitment to a new way of being, then of course the roller coaster is going to dip more deeply and perhaps take longer than otherwise would be the case if you were doing something more superficial.
Yeah.
So understanding how that roller coaster overlays change is really important too in planning for it.
I think one of the most important things around the roller coaster is we're not all in the same car. Some people go through it faster because of their experience. They've been there before. And some people are, right at the top holding on and they don't want to let go. And the leaders need to understand how people go through it and go through it differently. And it's all right that they don't all go through as a mass group, that it's all right for people to go through individually in their individual cars.
Yes, I think Machiavelli said something like the innovator in an organization has no support from people who are benefited from the status quo, and only lukewarm support from those who might benefit from a change. So there's a lot of vested interest in keeping things the same. There always is, because there's always someone on top in every circumstance like that. So they have more to lose than the rest of them.
Do. And so we come to the end of this session. We appreciate you listening to us. This is a beautiful picture of a system showing subsystems. So the forest is a system, and trees are a subsystem, and the soil is another subsystem, and the insects pollinating are another subsystem. And so we all have to work together so that we can achieve the outcomes that we want, which is beauty and oxygen and quiet. And I like this because we often can't see the forest for the trees. We often are detail people and concentrate on the trees. And this reminds us that we need to zoom out and see the forest. What's the outcome of the forest? Why do we want this to happen? And then all the different trees and subsystems within it all have to work together.
And of course, what we can't see here, Valerie, but I'm sure is active in this ecosystem as well, are all of the fauna, the animals in different shapes and forms living somewhere in that forest as well. And of course, that's a subsystem itself as well, with what's called the trophic hierarchy of predators all the way down to other species as well. So very diverse, very interacting or interconnected. And of course, one part of that system changes will influence the whole and the health of the whole as well. So lovely systems thinking metaphor there, Valerie, to finish up on.
Good. Thank you, Lewe. Always wonderful to talk to you. And
Thank
I'll
you.
see you soon. Thanks, guys.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.